Just how good is the GTA Definitive Edition really? It's been a couple weeks since the initial release, and Rockstar has already been getting cooked alive. People are upset about the current state of the games, the bugs, the graphics, the lack of songs and improvements, you name it, and people are bitching about it. I myself have played these games since their initial release, and I have a lot to say about them. And just so you know, I, for the most part, personally don't care about what people say. If a game is good, it's good, and if it's bad, it's bad. I don't need other people to tell me otherwise. But this time, however, there is a lot of validity to what is being said. And there's also a lot of crap being said that I just personally don't agree with. It's almost as if people had unrealistic expectations of these games and they let their nostalgia and hype dictate their better judgment. We'll go over that later, but for now, that's enough foreplay. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lost in Dead Space, and today we're going to throw a final verdict on these games. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I like about these games, what I hate about them, and most of all, is it worth your hard-earned dollars? First, I'm going to go over all the positives of these games, how they feel, how they operate, and how they play individually. Starting off with GTA 3. This is going to be the game that you notice most benefits from the Definitive Edition. This game is not as fun or as fleshed out as the other two, but it still has a lot of redeeming qualities, especially if you're a longtime fan returning to play with its new paint job. It feels very arcadey, it's very goofy, lighthearted, and charming in a weird way, just like it was all those years ago. One thing I will add though is that GTA 3 is the hardest of the three games. Not saying that it's hard per se, but it is the hardest. And you will notice this at about the halfway point where the game becomes very dicey. It's almost trial and error feeling. It turns into a lot of you dying because the game throws something at you weren't expecting, and then you restarting the mission and try avoiding dying from that thing. Rinse and repeat, and you eventually beat the game. And even though I said the game isn't hard per se, it becomes difficult in the last 3 or 4 missions. One of the biggest improvements to these games is that they added the restart feature. So if you ever fail a mission or die during a mission, you can just hit a restart. This is very nice because before this, if you failed a mission, you would have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get back to where you could attempt a mission again. Thank God that they added this feature, because if this feature was not in this one, I could see myself giving up on it after a while and just moving on to the other 2 games. And I know this sounds bad, but I don't want this to deter you from playing these games, because GTA 3 is still a lot of fun and has a lot of charm. For me, it was really cool to go back and see the first ever really open world game and see how far we've come in evolving our craft. It's by far the easiest out of the group to pick up and play whenever, since it's so simple and arcadey. The voice acting is so bad in this game, you don't even need to have the sound on to play it. You can just have our show or podcast on in the background like I did and rack up the new trophies and achievements added by the Definitive Edition. And by the way, since we're speaking of achievements, I highly advise against 100%ing these games unless you are a masochist and you love the feeling of agony and despair. I'll go over this more in detail later in the video, but for now, just take my word for it. It's best you just beat all the missions of this game and then just move on to the other ones. Speaking of the other games, when it comes to Vice City, everything is better. Just like with GTA 3, this game makes a notable improvement on the original release. Vice City is still my favorite GTA game to date, and replaying it in brand new graphics was a delight to say the least. The story for this game is fun and better than ever with the improved modernized controls and graphics. You can really tell that they improved the controls a lot when it comes to gunplay and operating vehicles. I will say, however, after playing this game for a long time and nostalgia wearing off, it does feel very empty. I don't know if this is the result of me playing newer games or if there's a lot of missing opportunities for the Definitive Edition. As good as the game's reskin is, there is some issues that I will cover later, but for now, we'll move on to San Andreas. This game is easily the most improved game from the Definitive Edition, gameplay wise. For some reason, San Andreas always felt way less polished than Vice City. Bad voice acting, audio quality, AI, and bad driving mechanics always made this game feel like a alpha build for me personally. Maybe it's because this game was so ambitious at the time that they had to cut a lot of corners to meet a certain deadline or something, or they just got lazy when it came to fine details. It's really hard to tell, but I am happy to say that the overhaul and quality of life updates that they added to these games really really helps this game out. Things that were so frustrating in the original game are much less of a stress than they ever were. When it comes to the frustrating missions like the RC airplanes or any of the missions involving ally NPCs, it just feels so much better. I'd say San Andreas is the best looking out of the 3 games, and it's the most modern feeling as well. There's not really much to say about this game. If you liked this game previously, you're going to like it now, and maybe even more. So, without wasting any more of your time, let's get into the negatives. For starters, I want to talk about one of the things I hate the most out of the Definitive Edition. It's really not something they did, it's more about something that they didn't do, and that would be addressing the horrible audio quality and lack of audio improvements. I know these games are old, but even back then the sound quality for these earlier GTA games were just not the greatest. And it's really weird for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you guys, to play a new game with HD textures that you just paid full price for, and it sounds like a Sega Genesis game.
Oh, man, that food feels cold. You chubby motherfucker. Next time you better start blasting, or I'm gonna blast you myself.
When I heard that the Definitive Edition was coming out and that they were doing a lot of quality of life updates, I for some reason just expected sound to be one of those key points that they were going to be working on, especially since sound design is such a critical key point of game developing. I know you can't just rehire the entire cast of these games and have them react the whole game for you. That's ridiculous. I'm not asking for that at all. But there is a lot of things that they could have done with the technology that we have today that could have significantly increased the quality of the original audio. I mean, some of the acting in this game is just god awful, especially in GTA 3 and San Andreas. It all sounds like everyone in the game is on a Zoom meeting with Dollar Tree microphones. And it's odd because Tommy Vercetti in Vice City, the game that came out before San Andreas, sounds 10 times better, and his writing is better. If the Definitive Edition came out and it was only $30, I would have no issues here. But the fact that we paid full price for a remaster of these 3 games, we deserve a full remaster that's worth full price. A little off topic, but something I never understood about San Andreas was that all the radio hosts in the game are in like professional studio quality, but then the entire rest of the game sounds like they're using an onboard microphone for a $20 laptop inside of a janitor closet.
People don't have a right to cheap transport. The Constitution is very clear on this. Remember, it's only a small step from mass transit to communism.
That's one up for the Grove. Say what, Smoke? All you managed to do was eat my damn food up. Yeah, it was getting cold.
And when it comes to sound effects, let's not talk about sound effects. Let's talk about how we fix the sound effects. It couldn't have been easier. All they had to do was just import all of the higher quality sound effects that they used for GTA 5 and call it a day. But no, instead they decided to do nothing with the sound design whatsoever. And I'm not a huge fan. I could go on and on about this. You guys understand where I'm coming from. I am curious, do you guys feel the same way about this, or am I just like a sound nerd or something? Let me know in the comments below. But anyways, let's move on to the other bummers. Another huge one was the removal of some of the music from the original soundtracks. We all knew this was probably coming, of course, but it still sucks to lose out on a bunch of main powerhouse songs that made Vice City's soundtrack so legendary. And this is also unfortunately the case with San Andreas as well, which lost a huge majority of the old school rap and hip hop songs that made that soundtrack so great as well. Also, when it comes to graphics, the improvements they made to the game were significant, but I feel like they could have done more, especially with the character models and the car textures. The environments look great, but for some reason the textures for the character models are wonky or half-assed looking. It almost looks like they just installed a bunch of mods for the game instead of actually having a developer create brand new assets, which is kind of a bummer because I was hoping for just a little bit more. But like I said, it does look pretty good. The environments look great, and all the work they did on smoothing all the edges in the environment and retexturing is really cool to see. But a big issue I have with these games is the draw distance for the HD textures. It is true you can see these games in a way you could never before, but for some reason the draw distance, even for the new consoles for HD textures, is only like 40 feet in front of you. You can literally sit on a patch of grass in Vice City and see with your own eyes where the blades of grass stop. And this is really weird because these games are not like graphically demanding by any stretch of the imagination, not even for old gen. So why is this a thing? I don't know. And when it comes to non-HD textures, the draw distance is still really not that great. You can literally see stuff appear and disappear right in front of you. It's kind of tacky, but I will say again, whatever is within draw distance does look good. So there's that. And the last huge bummer for me, and I'm sure a bunch of you will agree, is the fact that it will be extremely hard to 100% these games. When I first got the definitive edition, I was under the impression that I was going to 100% these games easily and retire with my head held high. And oh, I couldn't have been farther from reality. Everything became apparent when I got to the Gran Turismo mission. For those of you who are unaware of the Gran Turismo mission, like I was before I played it, it is a mission in GTA 3 where you have to race against 4 of the most poorly designed AI drivers I have ever raced against, whilst dodging the most poorly programmed AI traffic in video game history. This mission was made by Satan himself. It is so hard to keep your car on the road and keep it from flipping or blowing up that I guarantee you that you would not be able to even get to the end of the race on your first 5 attempts. On top of the miracle of just beating the mission, if you want the achievement for this mission, you have to complete the race in 180 seconds or less. And if you're unaware again of how difficult this is, it took me 4 hours of non-stop attempts to complete this mission within the timeline. And when I finally beat it, it was with only 1 second to spare. Not to mention that if you decide to push this mission aside until later in the game, more specifically after you piss off the Italians, this mission becomes literally impossible to complete. Because this race takes you through every inch and corner of the middle island, more specifically again, straight through their territory, multiple times, where they will open fire upon you with high-grade weapons, insta-killing you. By the time I actually completed this achievement, I was dead inside, feeling agony I haven't felt since playing Sekiro. After realizing that this was just one of many arduous achievements to complete, it was easy for me to see that 100%ing these games is not for normal people, unfortunately. And for me, that was a big bummer. But besides all these hiccups, these games are very fun. Do I think it's worth $60? No. I would wait until the price lowers to like 30. But if you like GTA, yeah, it is worth $60 because it's 3 games with achievements and tons of gameplay. I mean, San Andreas by itself is long as shit, so you'll be busy for 60 hours plus easily. If some of these things that I mentioned are bad and you're like, that's a game breaker, yeah, just wait for it to be cheaper. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. If you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, help this channel grow. If you want to see more videos that I've done about video games, click here. I mean, most of my channel, in fact almost all of it, is just about video games. But if you want to see different videos about like different types of videos that I made here, click one of these, whatever. But anyways, thank you guys once again. I love y'all, and I'll see you all next week. That's right, I am on a weekly schedule again, and I mean it, every week. Remember that, every week. See you. I love y'all. I'll see you every week.